Guys, this is Maria. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I will be sharing with you my high-risk pregnancy story. As you saw in the title, I'm going to cover the topics of PROM, which is premature rupture of membranes, gestational diabetes, progesterone shot, and also placenta previa. I've had all those diagnoses throughout my 3 pregnancies. If you're new here and you're just tuning in to find out the story, it's my 3rd pregnancy. I'm currently 28 weeks pregnant, and the reason for this video is, well, actually there's several. Some of you might have been following my updates, my pregnancy updates, and I don't spend much time on the high risk side in those. I'm just kind of sharing like regular pregnancy symptoms that I'm experiencing, and some of you might be wondering, why is she high risk when I mention it? Why am I on progesterone? What caused it? The other reason is I just want to share my story, and because when you find somebody who is just like you, when I found people that experience what I've experienced, I always wanted to find out what was like for them, what caused it for them. And last reason, which I don't even know if that's a plausible one, if there is anyone out there, who is in medical field and considering like learning more about high-risk pregnancies, premature birth and all, kind of want to give this information out there, share some of my medical information, medical story, and just have it out there. So it could be, I always wanted to be somewhat researched in a way, just to give me the answers why what happens to me. So I'm going to rewind back to my teenage years. I went through puberty very early at 11, and then ever since, my periods have been always pretty consistent. They weren't always easy, like I had cramping and all. And then also closer to my late teens, I've experienced functional cysts quite frequently. So they would come with my period and then they would go away. One of them hang around with me for 2 months, which was surgically removed. It was my early 20s through laparoscopy. At the time, a lot of my girlfriends actually have experienced the same. So functional cyst, it's rather common from where I was standing. I knew quite a few girls of my age that were experiencing the same thing. Most of us went on having children and having families, so it did not affect anybody's fertility per se. But I think back then I was also living in a big city, and I also, was so young going through this that even if anything was explained to me, why that was going on, I don't remember it. So that issue kind of resolved ever since I moved when I was 23 to Florida. Maybe college is much better, maybe, just the environment, whatever it was. I have not had any of those issues since I've been here. I also have never had fertility issues with all of my children. Pregnancy came rather easy. The only one we actually tried for was Scarlett, and it took us about 7 months to get pregnant with her. That was my first one. And I also think that it probably was because we weren't really tracking it. Like, I wasn't measuring any temperatures. I didn't track my ovulation. And sometimes it just takes time. I was getting concerned by like the time we got pregnant. I was like, what is going on? But then, we got pregnant and I've never had issues. My pregnancy was great. It was very healthy. All of my results always came back completely normal. I worked out. I led a very sexually active lifestyle with my husband. We did everything. I still traveled. I worked. I traveled for business. So I didn't really had to change my lifestyle much, and I had no prerequisites to do so because, again, all of my results came back always very positive. The only thing that was weird, that looking back in my other pregnancy, I actually got it checked, was that I got a very intense itching in the beginning of the pregnancy, which is a very uncommon pregnancy symptom. It affects about only 20% of women. Now, at 35 weeks, after I did my birthing class, my water broke in the middle of the night, and it was a gush of water. It was completely unexpected, but because we did that birthing class that day, both of us knew once the water breaks, you're having a baby. So we rushed to the hospital. A very, very rude and unintensive woman checked me. She was checking my cervix, such pain, demanding to show her the pad. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I am in stress. And then my contraction started and I delivered Scarlett early. It was a very traumatic experience because it was, you know, our first baby, and we did end up in the NICU with bradycardia, jaundice, and acid reflux, which acid reflux kind of resolved itself. All of those things resolved themselves, obviously. It was 10 days in the NICU that were extremely traumatic, and I will also talk about emotional and like psychological impacts of being high-risk pregnancy at the end of this video. Can I cover it with you? It will be more for those who actually have gone through it, just to tell you how I coped and how I got through this time. So when I tried to get any answers for why did I go into labor at 35 weeks, my doctor said, oh, you got your baby's fine, why do you care? We back then lived in Miami, and he's like, you didn't even have a C-section, just relax, you're nursing, you're good. So I've never received any answers as to why did my water break early. He said, you could have had an infection and that could have caused it. Fast forward 16 months, we started trying for Justin. Justin, actually, we didn't even get to try for, to be honest. It kind of happened, and up until 8 weeks, I didn't even know I was pregnant. The reason is we were traveling, and then we were coming back on the airplane. I had a very light period, which I was like, well, you know, maybe it's because of traveling, my body is off sad. So, and then like a few weeks later, I started getting all this like nauseous. I was you know, couldn't smell bacon. Bacon started smelling like sweat. Now I was just extra tired, and I was still nursing Scarlett at the time. And nursing became just so unpleasant for where before it was such a bonding experience. And then everybody's like, Maria, you're pregnant. I was like, I can't be. I had my period, and I'm not due for the next one yet. But then I missed the period, and I went to the doctor, and we found out we were eight weeks pregnant with Justin. With his pregnancy, I was put, because I had a premature rupture of membranes, I became high-risk pregnancy. So I was sent to ROC, Regional Obstetrician Consultants. It's somebody who monitors you when you have a high-risk pregnancy. So I can remember when did I start it. Maybe it was 12 weeks to 20 weeks. Every 2 weeks, I would go get the ultrasound done. And they were checking the length of my cervix, my uterus, my water levels. And let me tell you, my cervix is long. I believe it was like 5 centimeters every time. And it considered to be short below 3.5 centimeters. So that was ruling out one of the things, that I have an incompetent cervix. So my cervix was fine, and it's been fine throughout all of my pregnancies. Then I was put on progesterone shots. And if you're not familiar, they give progesterone shots to anybody who goes into labor early or has any kind of issues with pregnancy. Like, it's like a blanket kind of medication, because that's the only one out there that they can give to people in that situation, which I always had an issue with, because I was like, well, if my hormone levels are fine, why can't you check my hormone levels to make sure I need it? And nobody ever did. But then every time I tried to ask why premature rupture of membranes happens, nobody ever gave me an answer. So that I was at a different doctor's office at that time. So I already switched my OBGYN. So I started my progesterone shots at 21 weeks with Justin, because I kind of pushed it out as long as I could. I really didn't want to pound my body with hormones, especially if there is really no proof that they work. So I did that, and at 28 weeks I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And if you are familiar with progesterone shots, my doctor never actually kind of accepted the fact that my gestational diabetes wasn't used by the hormonal shots. She's like, well, you could have had it regardless. And I was like, well, this medication says it on the package that it could affect the way your body interacts with sugar, the way it absorbs it. So they never really took that in consideration, which made me really upset at the time. With gestational diabetes, I was able to control it through diet, and I monitored my blood sugar levels. I've gained an excessive amount of weight, which I lost most of it. But from the moment I started getting my shots, in a month, I've gained 10 pounds, which was pretty crazy, because I do have a really healthy diet. If you haven't watched my What I Eat in a Day videos, you can check them out. My diet is low in processed carbohydrates. If somebody asks me what I eat, I tell them that I eat complex carbs, protein, and healthy fats. And that's pretty much the bulk of my diet. Despite the fact that I was on hormones second time around, I did go into labor exactly at 35 weeks again. And Justin was delivered through C-section because even though I lost my mucus plug and my water was trickling out, I didn't start fully contracting, and every time I would contract a little bit, he didn't tolerate it well. So at that point, I really didn't care, and I really don't care, to be honest, if it's vaginal C-sections, like as long as you have a healthy baby is all that matters. So I had a C-section, and he went to NICU for one night to monitor his blood sugars, because if a mother has a gestational diabetes, regardless of when and how you deliver, your baby will be checked for the sugar levels, because gestational diabetes can impact them. Now, a little bit on the topic of gestational diabetes before I move on with my story is that why is gestational diabetes dangerous, and what are the risk factors, and what can you personally do to protect yourself and your baby? First of all, gestational diabetes is your body naturally, when you're pregnant, develops insulin resistance. The reason for it is it's a survival mechanism. Back in the day, food was scarce. So for pregnant women, the body, with all the hormones released, such as progesterone, one of them, your body would conserve all those fat cells so they wouldn't be broken down, and there would be enough to feed the baby. So in essence, it is a brilliant mechanism by our body. However, in the current day and age, when food is always in excess, it can go wrong, and your body will just become insulin resistant. Now, a lot of women that develop gestational diabetes could have been pre-diabetic, and they just didn't know it. Also, they could have some other risk factors that they were not diabetic yet, but they would have been in the future. For example, you have like a genealogy, and it could be triggered by just placenta hormones. So one of the things to keep in mind, if you do get the diagnosis of gestational diabetes, it's not necessarily you. Even though diet does play a big part, it is the hormones that are released by your placenta. Now, if you're an extremely healthy individual and then you get diagnosed with gestational diabetes, don't beat yourself up. It's just the hormones that have been released that now are causing insulin resistance in your body. If you're on progesterones, you are at a higher risk of developing gestational diabetes, because progesterone is one of those hormones that interferes with the way your body processes sugars and makes it more insulin resistant. So it is written on the package. It's not a secret. However, a lot of doctors will deny for a reason that your gestational diabetes could have been induced by that treatment. Handling gestational diabetes, depending on your stage, can be rather easy. It's just monitoring your carb intake. And I would highly suggest, if you clicked on this video and you have gestational diabetes, check out this book that I'm going to plop on the screen here, and I'm going to link it for you below as well. It's Real Food for Gestational Diabetes, because if you go online and you read recommendations, to me, and I'm not even just a nutritionist, I'm a person who understands the value of what you put in your bodies with the affect that you have. What they recommend is just ridiculous, like saying that you have to have 7 servings of carbs, and it needs to be whole wheat toast and crackers. Like, if you have gestational diabetes, you should not be eating any kind of bread, any kind of crackers, any kind of pasta, whole wheat, whole grains, none of that. This book that actually is recommended by a lot of professionals in the area, that will break it down for you, what you should eat and how your body interacts with everything that you eat. So you don't have to be a nutritionist to understand and to learn from. Now, Justin never stayed. This is my second one. Never stayed in the NICU. He went home with us, and I've recovered. It took me longer to recover due to C-section, gestational diabetes, and the hormones that I was on. My body took quite longer to get back in shape, but I did it. And then 4 years, well, almost 4 years, 3.5 years later, we got pregnant again. Our third pregnancy, we have not really tried for, to be honest. It wasn't a surprise. Our approach was like, well, if it happens, it happens. If it's not going to happen with us in this year, then we're good. Justin's going to take care of himself, so we don't have any more kids, and then, that will be complete. Now we did still kind of wanted the third one, so when the pregnancy rolled around, obviously we were very excited. And the reason I decided to document it and do more vlogs, because I haven't done it with first or second pregnancy with Justin. I somewhat did some vlogs, and I wish I did more. Looking back now, I would like love to watch them, because memory is really faulty. And when I tried to think, I was like, well, did I experience that? I can't remember. So I have to rely on whatever I have documented. With this pregnancy, again, you know, we got pregnant. We haven't really truly tried, but we haven't stopped it from happening. Let's put it that way. And then my symptoms in the first trimester were the only thing that I get. I don't get morning sickness. I don't throw up. My first trimester, predominantly what happens to me is like food aversions, and they've been quite light in the previous pregnancies. This pregnancy, my food aversions were much stronger. So like there was a bunch of things that I couldn't even be around for a while, but you know, I managed through that. Then about 15 weeks, something weird started happening. And because I'm already high risk pregnancy, I'm 34 years old. I've freaked out quite a bit. I started feeling really moist down there, and I was like, is my water breaking? And you know, again, because nobody ever told me why my water breaks so early, because I don't, and I've always felt great throughout my pregnancies. Like I've never had like a true reason to know why it happened on the day that it happened. Like there was no like sign for it, or there's nothing for me to look out for. So I am constantly on edge of thinking, it's like, what if my water breaks today? What if today is the day? It's like there's no reasons for it to be not a day, because the other days are just like that as well. So it's not very healthy, and I'll address that at the end of this video. Well, anyways, at 15 weeks, I started getting like a little moist. So I freaked out, and I went to ER thinking that my water might have been leaking. So they checked me, and they've found that I have bacterial vaginosis. What bacterial vaginosis is bacterial disbalance. There's an overgrowth of one bacteria that could cause that kind of sensation. Then I went and I got myself medication for that, and then it's just like weird things were happening. My lower back at night would hurt really bad, like burning. Then I had terrible insomnia. Never experienced insomnia. If you want to watch my like pregnancy updates, I kind of covered all of that in there. But like 15 to 18 weeks, it was just crazy. And that time when I went to emergency, they did find out that I have a low-lying placenta. Later on, like a week later, my doctor did an ultrasound, and I in fact did have placenta, complete placenta previa. What placenta previa is when your placenta is laying on top of your cervix. What are the dangers of it? Well, you could bleed because the baby's sitting right on your placenta. You could also, like, your chances for delivering natural vaginally, if placenta previa does not resolve as 0, because your baby cannot go through placenta. And there's multiple complications from that. Now, from about 15 weeks, I was really careful. I stopped walking as much, and I was honestly not comfortable to walk either. I would say the most symptom that I can talk about is that it felt like I felt pressure all the time, like I almost need to pee, but it wasn't a peeing sensation. It was scary. It was scary. Later, some you know, lower back pains. I honestly thought that I might not make it. I was emotionally getting ready myself for the tragedy, and luckily by about 20 weeks it all resolved. I also started my progesterone shots at 18 weeks after lots of hesitation, because I was like, well, I don't think they did anything for me the time before except induce gestational diabetes. But then at the same time, that is the only thing that was available out there for me to potentially change the course of my pregnancy. So I've gotten myself progesterone shots, and there is a potential that the reason why everything became normal is because I've gotten them. So from there on, you know, from about 18 weeks and on, it's been pretty easy ride. I did gain extra weight because of progesterone. Currently I am 28 weeks and I've gained 27 pounds. It is a pretty significant weight gain, especially for somebody my size, and especially for my history. But, you know, I'm just monitoring what I eat, and I can always lose it later. That's my perspective on this. Also, at 20 weeks ultrasound, we found out that my placenta previa has resolved. So not only I have a chance to potentially deliver naturally, not go through C-section, it also made me a little bit less stressed out for like, okay, and just to rewind, I've never bled with my placenta previa. I had no bleeding. I had no like crazy cramps. So a lot of people that experience placenta previa, not for everybody, it will resolve, though I think in 80% of cases it will resolve eventually. Now let's go back to gestational diabetes and update you on my current gestational diabetes results and like the whole story. Back when I was 16 weeks pregnant, they did my first sugar test. It was before I started doing hormones, and my sugar levels were great. Then 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, I had to do my 1 hour test, which I failed with really high numbers. And then this week was my time to get my gestational diabetes, like 3 hour insulin resistance test, or glucose test, I think it's called, which I passed, and I do not have gestational diabetes this time around, which is amazing because gestational diabetes is also another potential for preterm labor. I do have to say I'm pretty much on a diet that I would be if I did have gestational diabetes, just because of the way my weight gain has been tracking. My doctor's like, well, with this kind of rate, you'll be 45 pounds. I'm like, what? I cannot gain 45 pounds. I am 110 pounds pre-pregnancy. This is like more than a third of my weight. So I am just eating very healthy again. I eat lots of complex carbs. I eat lots of protein, full fat protein included, and lots of healthy fats. All that you need to grow a healthy baby. Now, all of that I shared with you are just my experiences and what I feel like was going on with my body. And again, the reason I wanted to share these stories for those who have had something similar, for those who are interested, and those who were like, why is she high risk pregnancy? What happened to her? So this is all I've got. Hopefully this time around, my goal is to make it to 36 weeks. Let's cross the fingers that it's going to happen. I've literally taken out anything that could potentially put me into labor earlier. I barely walk. I don't lead a sexually active lifestyle. I take care, like if I listen to my body, if my body tells lay down, I lay down despite of the children. So Justin and I really buckled tight to make this the best experience possible. So hopefully it will pay off. This video is getting quite long, but I did promise you to cover the emotional sides of being a high-risk pregnancy and kind of going through what I went. And I can tell you that having a premature baby and leaving the baby in the NICU, you know, it was the hardest thing we've done. I filmed the story of how we went through it when it was pretty raw. Scarlett was only 8 months old, and now that you know it's been 6 years, what I can tell you that for years I've harbored guilt, and I definitely had a postpartum depression, even though back then I didn't realize I did, because I had so much going on. Like, you know, we would wake up at like crack of dawn, leave our apartment in Miami, go to the hospital, stay there entire day, like holding her, just running out to eat lunch or something, coming back to hold her again, then come back to our bedroom that was like, we never made our bed, we never cooked at the house. For those 10 days, we like basically lived in a hospital. And I've harbored lots of guilt that I have done something wrong. Now that, you know, years have passed and I've already went to check off, okay, my cervix is fine. So my hormones I am on, I'm not working out, and it's like things like that it happened the second time with Justin, with all the precautions that we have taken, kind of relieved a lot of that guilt from me. And also the fact that she's absolutely fine, that also relieved a lot, because I was hypersensitive and on the high alert for anything being wrong for the first probably 3 years of her life. I was like a crazy mom. Like if anything wasn't like according to the schedule of that's what she's supposed to do, you know, there's like a wide range of when your baby is supposed to start doing X, I would always be proactive. And if she wasn't doing X at the early time of that time break, I went on and I was like, we were doing activities. So in a way, so the way I've handled it, I've immersed myself in early childhood education and development, and that's what you see on my channel. That's the biggest reason why it's there, is because that was my way to cope. And even though my reasons for diving into it weren't healthy, like emotionally healthy, I feel like I did cope with it probably in a best way possible. That didn't really hurt my children, outside of the fact that they've always been busy, screen free, and always doing some kind of activities. It's very funny because Scarlett right now talks in terms of Pinterest development and creating activities for Julia that she's gonna do, and that Julia is gonna be looking at black and white cars when she's first born, and the reasons for it. So it's, you know, my mental state of trying to overcompensate for not being able to carry her full term, kind of, I think I coped with it, even though it wasn't a healthy, again, coping in a best potential outlet out there. Now, with another outcome that came from it, is an exceptional anxiety throughout my pregnancy, because there was never truly a reason why I went into labor. Or, I mean, obviously there is a reason why I went into labor twice at 35 weeks, but we have never found it. I have an anxiety that like something might happen almost every, so I go through my life, right? Like, I take care of the kids and I'm really busy, and that helps me coping with a consistent knowing background feeling of like, what if today is the day? What if this week is the last week? What if that week is the last week? So the best way I can tell you, it's a very unhelpful feeling. Don't recommend it on anyone, and if you don't have it, please don't put it on yourself. But the way I cope with it is just staying exceptionally busy as I can, to just, even though it's running in the back of my mind, I'm not actively involved in thinking that thought, because it's not helpful, and there is really no good reason for me to be doing that. But again, the best way I find myself is just keeping myself busy with children, with my channel, with my work, just to like relieve that anxiety. If you made it all the way through this exceptionally lengthy video, thank you for watching it. Hopefully my story helped you. Hopefully you walked away with something from it that is positive, that you've learned something. And one of the biggest things that I can say, you know, we all have our journey of becoming a mother. So whatever your journey is, it's your journey, enjoy it. The most important thing is the result is having healthy, happy children. And that is all what life is about. Anyway, I'll see you later.